Okay, so the next step with lights is to start playing around with shadows. And I'm going to start off with just a very simple setup here with a color solid and no, I'll use now don't get me wrong, I'm not breaking my own rules here. I'm intentionally bringing a small SD clip into a larger clip here, okay? Because I want to use this as an object more than an actual picture to fill that composition frame. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to drop in a piece of text. So I can do this in a few ways. I'll just drop in text that way, and I'll give it a color just so you can see it a little bit more easily. No, I'll go yellow with it. And that text and that piece of video are probably sitting at exactly the same position in Z space there. So I'll pull those apart. I'll make each one 3D because they have to be 3D for any lights to happen, and I'll pull that forward a little bit there. And next thing I'm going to do is just create a light, and I'm going to use the point light for this because it's one of the easier ones to use for replicating light bulbs and things like that. And I'll just drop it as is, and I'll pull that one forward, or sorry, backwards. Right, now I'll go back in there and increase the fall off distance so I can get the text and the background both pretty much accepting that shining of that light. And the light casts shadows, that's fine. You don't see shadows at the moment, that's fine too. Now what I'm going to do now is actually just create a camera so that we can pull this into 3D space and see what's going on. So the camera is just for illustration purposes here, you know, just to as I say, allow us to look at the scene a little bit easier like that. I'll just come back a little bit. So we're looking at a background, a piece of text, and a light. Now I'm going to lock the camera layer. I don't need to do anything with it, but I do want to be kind of playing around with where this light is. So what we're looking at now is we're looking at the text, we're looking at the background, we're looking at the light. So I'm going to push that text back a little bit towards the background image, and then I will also do the same with the light. Back a little bit more. Okay. Now in order for the shadows to work, I need to change a few settings on these layers. So there's another aspect to a layer once it's become 3D, and those are its material options. Now its material options are covering a couple of different kind of aspects of it. You'll see that you have some very specific settings. Does it cast shadows? It either does or it doesn't. Does it transmit light? In other words, can light come through it as if it were a piece of translucent colored glass? And then does it take shadows and lights? And then you have all of these different qualities of the surface, and these kind of dictate whether or not it's extremely shiny, whether it's has a matte finish, whether it's like a mirror, whether you can, whether it's actually like looking into a piece of glass, or whether it's more metallic. So you can see all those down there, and you can play around with those and go into the help section to get the exact descriptions of what each one of them does. For now, I just want to I'm dealing with shadows, so I need to make sure that my text casts shadows. So I'll click on, and straight away you'll see a shadow fall on the background there. That's fine. So my door, the background, is also going to have material options, and that's going to have one that asks does it accept shadows, and it is by default on. Does it accept lights? It is on as well. Okay, so you can have that off and it can still get shadows. So that might be something actually that I'll use. So I'll leave the accepts lights as off, so it's not actually taking the effect of the point light anymore. It's just looking perfectly normal, except for the fact that it now has a shadow being cast on it. So if I were to now kind of move this light around, you'll see that the shadow also moves in a very kind of a realistic kind of a way. So with After Effects, you don't have that kind of straightforward drop shadow that you can use in Photoshop, for example. This, as you can see, requires something to be shining onto something else. That something, in this case text, needs to be casting or throwing a shadow, and that shadow needs to be caught by something. This is what's known as a shadow catcher or a shadow plane, and shadow planes are an integral part of compositing, where you're using lights that cast shadows on anything. Okay, um, so you can see here now that the video is moving away through. We don't need to worry about the video, but just like the light can be moved and shine the shadow in different ways, the quality of the shadow can also be adjusted in the light settings. So the shadow darkness can be darker or lighter, and the diffusion can be harder or softer. So now it's very hard, and I've got it up to 10%, and I'll darken it as well so you can see it a little bit better. Naturally, the closer the text is to the surface, the shadow will follow. Okay, so it is perfectly realistic in where the shadow goes, how big it is, but you do have control over how dark that shadow is, for example, and how soft that shadow is. So I could be doing this on a color solid, and I can be doing it on any kind of an object at all that can be 3D. So what I'll do now is I'll just quickly switch off the door layer. Actually, I'll switch that from 3D to 2D, and what I'm going to do, actually I'll delete it altogether. Right, I'm going to create a color solid. White solid, that's fine. Click OK. Yes, and just select that so I can find that. Turn it 3D. So you'll see now that that's taking the shadow as well. Now there's an old trick that's was kind of used a lot in After Effects and in compositing when it came to shadow planes, and that was the use of a color solid to be used as a shadow catcher. So I'm going to quickly show you how you can use a color solid as a shadow catcher, and it works in a few ways. Color solids, once they've been switched to 3D, will give you certain material options, and one of those options is does it accept shadows? Yes for on. Only means it will only catch shadows, and off means that it why is that doing that? Okay, I'm going to cut this now and look at it in a second video so you can just take it up to the point where you were getting a shadow light text and shadow plane. I'll just stop this video and start a new one and get that working.